Clay Travis on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. What's up, Clay? How are you?
I'm doing well. How are y'all?
Awesome, thanks. You spent some time in our fair city over the weekend watching the start of the USFL. I consumed the game on television. As you know, Lance and Jim were with you. Look, I mean, they've been practicing like 3 weeks. It was the first game of the league. I was blown away at the quality, at least, of the Birmingham, New Jersey game. I thought the TV production looked good. I thought it was a huge win for the USFL Saturday night.
Yeah, look, I mean, they're in the process of trying to demonstrate that spring football makes sense. And I've thought it does for a long time, but obviously there have been a lot of different leagues that have failed. The advantage that the USFL has, and I think I told you guys this last week, is they've already got a television partner because Fox owns the league. So unlike a lot of the other leagues that have to go out sort of hat in hand and convince people to put them on, Fox has got the programming to put on. They'll finish, obviously, the first year. I think they'll certainly play a second year, and it'll be intriguing. To me, the big question is going to be, there's always a little bit of initial interest. What does the dip look like as we move into week 2 and 3? After the opening weekend game, drew 3 million or more, whatever the total number was, when all was calculated. So I think that's really kind of the question going forward.
So what's going to happen with the XFL? Because now it looks like they want to go head-to-head with the USFL.
Yeah, I don't know. Remember, the XFL started right after the NFL ended. I actually like this time frame better. Because I don't know about you guys, but the day after the Super Bowl, as much fun as football is, I'm ready to kind of move on and take a couple of week breather and then get ready for college basketball. I actually like the launch here because the time frame is, especially when you get into June and July, there really isn't any major competition. Now, I know that Major League Baseball is going on, but it's kind of the dog days of the Major League Baseball season. And people are ready for the NFL to return, but you're not quite to training camps and everything else associated with the return of football. So I actually think what we'll probably see, and I'm curious if I'm going to end up being right, is the usual dip in interest as we go to weeks 2 and 3. But I think as they come down the home stretch of the season, we may start to see an uptick in interest. As people sort of buy into to football season not being that far away. I mean, you guys know this because we've done it for years. How many times do people just love SEC media days and wildly overcover and pay attention to it relative to the news just because there's this great demand for football season to finally be here. And I think that the USFL can kind of sate some of that demand.
Clay Travis is with us, and he was in town with a number of Fox executives, the brass of Fox Sports, for the opening weekend of the USFL. And I'm interested, and I think a lot of people in Birmingham are interested about this, Clay, is what is the perception with the Fox people, the execs, and the nation, you think, of, okay, when Birmingham's playing, there's 17,000 plus in the stadium. When everyone else is playing, there's going to be nobody or very few people. Are they expecting Birmingham fans to go to these other games? Are they disappointed if we don't go to those games? Or do you think the Fox folks, the nation's going to look bad on Birmingham if we're not putting a few thousand fans in for the Tampa Bay Pittsburgh game?
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I know that everybody's pretty happy with the game on Saturday night. I would like to think that as more people become aware of the fact that these games exist and how cheap the tickets are, that there's going to be people who decide to take, their family and go watch some of these games. I mean, I think the natural challenge is there's never really been a precedent for something like this, right? Where you have 8 different teams representing 8 different geographical areas and you play them all at effectively the same place. Until you get to the playoffs when you're going to move those games to Ohio. So it is, to me, the opportunity that Birmingham has is to demonstrate that they can be a big league city, right? And I know that there's going to be, I mean, when you're talking about, 4 games every weekend, only one of them involves Birmingham, I think that's going to be a challenge that would have existed everywhere. But I'm curious to see whether people sort of, as the weather gets better, I know the weather was kind of tough on what I guess it would have been Sunday when a lot of those games are going on, at least initially. So I'm curious to see as people become more aware of what it's like, what that will transpire to reflect. I think the more people in the crowd in general, the more it feels like people care, even if the number of people in the crowd are a tiny subset of the number of people watching at home, right? I think you saw that, for instance, in the NFL when they had empty stadiums with COVID. It didn't really, or quarter-filled stadiums or whatever it was, it didn't really feel like a normal game. I do think that the crowd watching at home takes some of the feel for that game, even if they're sitting on their couch, based on how the crowd in person is reacting.
Clay Travis is with us, Outkick.com. You see him on Fox Sports. Follow him on Twitter, @Clay Travis. He is with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. I'm curious if we have ever seen a marketing deal that matched up with the person getting the deal better than this one. For instance, I'll give you what I feel like is a bad example. Like Joe Montana and Tony Romo selling Skechers, and Howie Long has just never felt, I don't feel like those guys genuinely wear Skechers, right? Today, Hooters has announced that they have signed an NIL deal with John Daly Jr., who's a freshman golfer at Arkansas.
Yeah.
And his dad's had a long-running deal with him, Clay, and it just, like, that is a perfect match to me for endorser and company. And now they're extending it to another generation, which will probably fit too.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw that, I thought, how in the world do we not at Outkick have a Hooters deal, considering that I'm the First Amendment and boobs guy, right?
Well,
like
that's
that
true,
seems
yes.
kind of like a natural fit for us too, or was it Tilted Kilt or whoever those
Twin Peaks would work for you. Twin Peaks would work.
Twin Peaks also would be a no-brainer, I would think. But yeah, like I do think that whatever the cost of that partnership was, it will be immediately recouped in just the media attention that they get over the next day or two associated with signing it, and that's a sign of how well paired the endorser and the product are.
If you were a general manager, you needed a quarterback in the first round, would you go Baker Mayfield if he was available, or one of these other guys like Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, Matt Corral?
I'd probably take a chance with one of the younger guys, just because I feel like we know what Baker is, and it's possible that one of the guys in the quarterback draft this year is going to be a total stud. Right, I feel like Baker is no better than the 20th best starting quarterback in the NFL. And look, I mean, there are certainly guys that are worse, but based on what we've seen in the first 4 years, I think it's 4 years of his career, maybe it's only 3, but I think it's 4. We feel like we have a pretty good sense for what his ceiling is and what his floor is on a game-to-game basis. There are relatively few, and you guys know this well, quarterbacks that don't pan out at their first location and then become big-time playmakers at another location. It just doesn't happen very often. Doesn't mean that it can't, but it just doesn't happen very often. So for the most part, you are what the film reflects that you are after your first 4 or 5 years in the league. So I would take a chance on, and I'm not sure which of those guys, by the way, Matt Corral, Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, which of those guys might end up being good. And it's possible none of them are going to be very good, right? But I would rather have an uncertain potential stud than a certain mediocrity.
All right, so as soon as Lance asked that, Brandon in the chat room, because this came up when we discussed this the other day, Baker Mayfield or Ryan Tannehill, if you're a Titans fan?
I'm not really that excited about either of them, but to me, at least you're done with, in theory, Ryan Tannehill after this year if you're the Titans.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like Baker Mayfield is going to, in some way, look, Tannehill had a couple of really good seasons with the Titans, and then last year he was crap, and worse than crap in the postseason.
Cost you the game. Cost you the game in the postseason.
Yeah, totally cost the game. I mean, all you had to do was beat the Bengals at home, and you had them sacked 9 times.
Yep.
It's not like the defense was getting crushed and they gave up 45 points or something and you lost. I mean, you got 9 sacks Had the ball 3 times, I think, in the fourth quarter, tie game with a chance to win. Don't throw an interception at the end. In the worst case scenario, it goes to overtime. And he gave it away at home. So this is the second straight home playoff game Ryan Tannehill's lost. And so he's done to me. I have zero faith that he's going to make a run for the Titans. I suspect that most of his teammates kind of feel the same way about him. And as a result, I don't really want Ryan Tannehill long-term commitment, and I certainly don't want Baker Mayfield long-term commitment.
But you won't finish bad enough as the Titans to get a high draft pick. Now, you could trade up there potentially. I mean, so what would the Titans do there, you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sold that they're going to – I mean, yes, you're right. I mean, it's probably likely that the Titans will contend because the Texans and the Jags are so bad. Yep. That they'll contend to potentially win the AFC South for a third straight year. So I don't know. I mean, look, they're going to have to make some big decisions. I mean, they do have a lot of trade capital, right? I mean, A.J. Brown at some point is going to be expecting $20 million a year as a wide receiver. If the Titans are moving on from Ryan Tannehill after this year, I could see a situation where we have a Tyreek Hill type trade where a team that thinks that they are on the upswing trades with the Titans for A.J. Brown, takes on a big contract, and the Titans get a high-level draft pick to potentially go grab a quarterback of the future. I also think that, look, John Robinson may feel like he has the ability to go find somebody else who's on the scrap heap and find him at low value. While Tannehill is overpaid now, the Titans got him for virtually nothing from your Dolphins. And I think if you had said, hey, Ryan Tannehill is going to join the Titans and they're going to win 2 straight AFC South championships and go to the AFC Championship game with him, I think most people would have said no way. So he certainly exceeded expectations. I think the problem he's shown is that his ceiling is where it is. And I think the other thing with the Titans is, what's so frustrating about that Bengals loss is it feels like they may have missed their window because Derrick Henry's now 28 years old, and as much of a freak as he is, there aren't that many running backs who are elite after the age of 30. You saw him break down a little bit, at least with the injury that he had. And I know he worked his way back, but we'll see how good he is this coming year. But I could see a scenario where the Titans move on from A.J. Brown, where they move on from Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, and go back and try to get younger and use a lot of those assets to try to recoup draft capital.
We got a reservation for 4 tonight at a great steakhouse called Oak House that just opened here, and we need one more. If we sent a plane, our Wheels Up plane to you in Nashville, would you fly in and have dinner with us tonight, or do you have other plans?
I'm eating dinner with Trump tonight, so I will be tapping out on that.
We're more interesting, Clay.
I love like I don't want to think Clay might beat around the bush. Clay, I'm eating dinner with Trump tonight. Period. In the Senate.
Hey, what will y'all have, by the way?
I think they sent a menu already. I can't even remember. I mean, look, I'm not going to be picky. I mean, first of all, I like it any and everything, but I think there's a steak and a fish dish. So
does
I think both of them.
High-end wine?
I don't think Trump drinks.
Interesting.
Wow, breaking news.
No, I think that's right. I think I've read that.
Dun, dun, dun.
He doesn't drink.
He does not.
He does not drink. Wow.
No,
He doesn't drink any alcohol. I mean, I think he had one of the all-time great quotes, which was, "Can you imagine if I did drink?" What I would say.
No.
Which was,
Him on Twitter.
I think most people are pleased he doesn't drink. Like, okay, that's a good thing.
So this is the second time you visited him at his home?
I've been if you count the White House as a home, I guess it would be the third.
Well, I'm just setting you up all day long today.
You really are. You have teed Clay up twice now. If you count the White House.
Well, see, here's the problem. I think I lost $1 to Brown that you didn't bring up. You were having dinner with Trump, that I had to set you up to get you to admit you were having dinner with Trump. I told Brown.
I mean, when you get let's be honest. When you get to be as big time as me, I mean, I don't even need to brag, right? I mean,
Thank you for being honest.
Well, let me ask you though, Clay, will you be the second most famous person at this dinner?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Okay.
I personally think Clay will have a higher Q rating right now.
Well, I don't know.
When he rolls into dinner. I went home and bragged to my wife about you. A servant's heart the other night in the suite. You kept you kept basically waiting on my table. You kept saying, Jim, do you need another beer? Jim, you want another beer? Jim, anybody need a beer? You were like waiting on my table.
Yeah, I did. I waited on the whole suite. I wanted to make sure everybody had enough alcohol.
Yeah.
We had the. I mean, by the way, that's a well designed, I would say, suite side. I guess that's what the west entrance to the UAB stadium.
Uh-huh.
They've done a nice job building out that entry sort of foyer or whatever you would call it there, and the suites above it. I was pretty impressed. I'm sure they spent a substantial amount of money, but that's well done.
All right, he is Clay Travis at Clay Travis on Twitter, Outkick.com. Thank you, Clay. Enjoy your dinner tonight. We'll see you next week.
All right, sounds good. I'll see y'all.
All right, bye. That is Clay with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.